Hi everyone. So tonight I wanted to take another look at live stacking and kind of walk through how I do it, when I do it. I had some questions off and on about how to get the most out of this and what you can do with it, especially for things like outreach or people that are just looking to have some live fun or just getting started in the hobby and want to get a little bit more than just kind of a single picture, or really aren't ready to do a lot of processing on it. So to start off with, I'm going to be using Sharpcap Pro. There are a lot of other applications that also do live stacking, but Sharpcap Pro is the one that I like, and it's pretty cheap. If I remember correctly, it's $20 or $30 a year for the Pro license, and there's a free version also that I think doesn't have the live stacking included. But the camera I'm working with tonight is my ZWO ASI 1600, which is a pretty common and very popular camera these days. It is a black and white camera, so we'll just kind of expect that. But this is an evening that is mostly full moon. There's even a little bit of clouds, so we may or may not see a whole lot there. But part of why I wanted to do this during the full moon here is I'm running this under a hydrogen alpha filter, which is a very common filter for people to kind of get and start off with, and it's really good for working with things in the backyard. So to start off with here, I'm going to run this in the mono color space because it's black and white, and what I kind of wanted to run through here are kind of the common controls that you're going to be working with when you're doing kind of this live stacking. So the first one is kind of your exposure side. So when you're live stacking, the thing you don't want to do is wait minutes and minutes and minutes for each image. So normally you're going to be looking at a lower exposure time. Right now I'm starting at 15 seconds, may run it up to about 30 or even 60, depending on what we're doing. But that's about as far as I'm going to push anything that I'm working with when I'm live stacking it. You have your kind of quick picks here, or you can just kind of type them in. Next one is your gain. So most, especially newer folks getting in the hobby these days, are dealing with a CMOS camera, which allows you to adjust the gain. There's a lot of misconceptions about what gain is, and what it does. It does not make your camera more sensitive. It's essentially an amplifier. But the point is with gain is that if you've got a lot of numbers at the low end of your histogram, looking at, say, like the peak we've got here, a lot of my data is down here, then especially when I get into my background, I may have a lot of things set at 0 to 65,000, maybe the possible values in that pixel. If I have a lot that are in the 300 range, then out of that 65,000, right, there may not be that much difference between my background here on something that comes in at 300 versus something that's at 305, right, at a lower gain. But if I increase the gain and it multiplies it, what ends up happening is something that, if you have something that might straddle 300 and 301 on a pixel value, the lower your gain, the more those numbers get rounded out together. If your gain's higher, then it'll say that multiplying factor before it assigns the data number means you get a little bit more granularity in that kind of range that may be down here. Something that would be 300 before gets multiplied by 2, and now it's 600. And the thing that was right on that edge of 301 gets multiplied by 2 also, and it's now 601. Right? So there's so you get a little bit more differentiation in that amplification. And so where that really helps you is when you are doing things with, say, like a hydrogen alpha filter that's going to cut out a lot of light and make things, have to be a longer exposure in order to get a lot out. So if I change this gain now to, say, 250, which is a much higher gain level than the 75, and let it run for 15 seconds, we're going to watch what happens with this histogram here. You should see it jump up a lot. There we go. Yeah, so you can see that histogram jumped up a lot. And I'm going to jump back in here. I'm getting some clouds coming through here. But you can see what was a very sharp peak now is a little bit more delineated out. You can also see I am clipping more values here. Now, this is probably because of some of these high-level clouds coming in. But it allows me to get a little bit more differentiation in here. Why that's important to get that more depth in this kind of middle range is when you're live stacking, you're not going to be exposing for so long that you're going to be super clipping a lot of these stars. So what you want is you want that nebulosity to really come out. So that's why we tend to run these at a higher gain, is it can let me get a better dynamic range in the part of the image that I'm most concerned about, which is that nebulosity and things like that, with a shorter exposure time. Also, on a lot of these cameras, your read noise tends to get lower the higher your gain setting is. But I consider that kind of more of a side benefit. The noise levels on most of these newer CMOS cameras are typically pretty good to begin with anyways. I normally don't mess with the frame limit. The flip can be nice if you want to see, if something's, turned upside down. Right now I've got this on the Veil Nebula. I am not live stacking yet. I'm just kind of still walking through everything here. We're going to go ahead and let it flip. And so, if you want to get something more right side up or that kind of thing. Turbo USB, this kind of setting can be valuable if you're running through a USB 2 hub. I'm running everything on USB 3, so the speed really kind of is an issue. I just kind of don't move it off of the default there. Same thing with the speed modes and the binning and all that. The next thing that's actually important here is the brightness. So brightness in Sharpcap when it comes to a CMOS camera, or specifically the ZWO cameras, is the equivalent of the offset. So when you hear people talk about gain and offset, and you're in Sharpcap and you're trying to maybe follow some of the math that people have said is a good gain and offset level, that the brightness control is where you go for offset. What that essentially is doing is adding a certain value to every pixel that comes in to make sure that you don't have anything that just flat out hits 0. The higher your gain, the bigger you want this number to be for math reasons. It's just part of when things get averaged and stacked and all the kind of algorithms that go on. If you're running at high gain, 10 or 15 is probably a little too low. You might want to bump it up to 50. Like I said, once again, this is kind of a pixel value kind of thing, or an ADU type value a lot of times. So 50 is not normally going to materially mess up your image. So you can kind of be okay. I wouldn't run this at like an offset of 300 or anything, but anything 100 or less, you're probably going to be fine with. And then thermal controls. This is important if you have a cooled camera. Turn on the cooling. Right now, I normally like to run my stuff at -10, so I'm going to put that on and let it start cooling the camera down. Don't go nuts with cooling your camera, especially if you're doing live stacking. You're not going to go for pristine images. It's going to be hard to get a perfect kind of image when you're doing these kind of high gain, shorter exposures anyways. If you can cool your camera down to 0 degrees, you're going to get a lot of benefit over what you would normally get with the DSLR. I normally choose -10 because it is a target temperature that I can hit in the summer, and it's a target temperature I can hit in the winter. And that way I'm kind of always shooting apples to apples whenever I'm out there. You can leave this open or kind of minimize it down to get it out of your way. And just depends on your camera as to how long it takes to cool down there. Miscellaneous controls. I don't mess with these unless I am doing something on like a planetary side. Sometimes that's where the auto brightness and stuff like that can be kind of helpful. And then these next two, I would say a lot of people early on are kind of afraid of doing. I would really say this is this is more important than you think if you want to have a good time doing live stacking. So subtracting a dark and subtracting or applying a flat to your image is really important. All the cameras that we have certain defects in them, hot pixels, cold pixels, that kind of thing. And especially when you're live stacking, those issues just kind of come out and look like extra noise and can really make you not as happy with your image. When you're doing the flat is, in my opinion, really important for the quality of your image when you're live stacking. And try to kind of show this here, maybe a little hard to see with a single frame, but you get a lot of vignetting in depending on your system, right? And so in my case, you can see here, I can see some decent detail in the center here, but the edges are a decent amount darker. It's not too bad in the single image, but the more and more I stack this, the more and more that's going to come out. And so having a flat file to really kind of get rid of that vignetting especially is going to just make it a much more enjoyable experience when you're going through and doing your live stacking. So the dark helps you out with the noise. The flat is going to help you with the vignetting, maybe even if you have some dust donuts, that kind of thing. So that's actually the first thing I'm going to do here is I am going to go ahead and subtract a dark and subtract a flat. So I need a dark and I need a flat. So I need to capture those. So I've got my gain and my offset here set the way that I want for this particular imaging session. So now I want to go ahead and take my darks. So I'm going to go up to capture here, and they've got a tool in for capturing a dark. So I'm going to go ahead and do this here. You can see front and center, red, cover the telescope camera. So I'm going to do that in just a second here. And I will be right back once I have everything covered up. All right, so I'm covered up. I can see that I've actually got a little bit just dark frame here when I use my lightning button to kind of auto stretch this. Definitely dark. Number of frames to average. What I would normally say is do at least 20 to 25 if you can. So you get a real good average on that dark frame. And then once you've got your gain settings and everything set where you want, you can also use this. Where do we want to save this? I would recommend you do dark library. Sharpcap will automatically kind of mark what all these settings were, and then that's just going to make it a lot easier to pick the dark frame that you want to pick going forward, because you may get a 15-second, 30-second, 60-second, etc. So I'm going to go ahead for tonight, though, just to keep it relatively quick. I'm just going to go to 10 here, and then we're going to go ahead and start it. Actually, I'll do 15. And we're going to go ahead and start it here. So now you can see it's gone to saying, it's got the capture buttons there. This is gray. Down at the bottom, how many frames is it capturing? And that kind of deal. You also get a readout on your temperature and all that. And then right here, it's giving me an ETA of when it's going to be done. So it's going to take about 3 minutes to do this. And just build this time in to your imaging session. Your dark frames aren't going to change much evening to evening. So if you do put it in that dark library and you've already got one for the settings, great. But for right now, we're just going to operate under the assumption that we're starting this out from the first time. We're just going to let it go through and automatically capture these. The great thing about this from Sharpcap is it will automatically go ahead and capture, average them, name them, save them. So this is really, really handy so you don't have to do all that work yourself. So we're just going to let this run, and I will be back as soon as we're done capturing those, and then we'll move on to flat frames. All right, so now we're back. It's done capturing that flat frame. And then what I can do to check it is if I go to browse here to subtract it, it'll actually take me straight to that folder of the gain that I had and everything, because it knows where it is. So that's great. So I'm going to say I'm going to pick that one. And a good test of this is with the cap still on. I'm going to let it go through and collect an image and see what that dark removal is doing here. You can see frame's much darker now. That's what it was able to remove from doing that dark frame. So I'm going to have that much less noise in all my images, which is great. The next thing that I'm going to need to do is apply a flat here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take off my dark frame. And then I have a little tracing panel that you can light up and put on top of the scope to create my my flat field. At the same point in time, you may use t-shirt method or twilight sky flats, whatever flats method works for you. There's a lot of great tutorials and videos out there about how to take good flats. For mine, I'm going to run outside and go ahead and put my flat panel on, and I'll be back as soon as I've got that ready. Okay, so I've set up my flat panel, and I can tell it's working because my image is pretty much just white now. So with flats, you don't need anywhere near the same length of exposure. So we're going to start with, bump this down to like a half-second exposure. All right, now you can see in my histogram here that I've got a much lower down near the 20% mark, which, by the way, you can find that under the tools menu to just click on histogram or click it off as you want. But I'm going to go ahead and put it on here, and then just like we did with darks, we're going to go to capture and capture flat this time. So we look at the red things here first. Set up flat field illumination, so I did that. Select the camera and adjust the settings. So we already went through most of the settings, but really I'm trying to keep my gain and everything about the same as what I'm doing on my normal ones, just because it on a flat it isn't critical, but it is nice if it's all about the same, if you can make it work. So adjusted my time here, and you can see what it's saying here. Histogram status, try to get more pixels above 20% saturation. So it's saying I need a little bit more time than half a second. Okay, well, let's go to 1 second and see what that does. All right, so that bumped it up, so we're near 40%. Histogram status, okay. Great. So no reason not to take a few more here to get a nice, good average on my flat field. This create monochrome flat field comes into play when you're using a color camera. I played around with both. I find that monochrome tends to work best. Then you have this capture and subtract bias frames to correct for black level offset in flat. This one, it's really going to depend on your camera as to how good or bad this is, but sometimes if you're not subtracting those bias frames from what you're getting, you're going to end up over-correcting, and instead of ending up with dark vignetting around the sides, you'll end up with light vignetting. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this on, and hopefully that'll work fairly well for us here. And then you have at the end, apply the new flat once the capture is complete, which means it'll just go ahead and automatically throw it into the apply flat area here. So we're going to go ahead and start and let it capture through. So it's capturing the frames there. But you can see this moves pretty fast. If you can get any way to take flats, it's always going to improve your images that you're going through. All right. We've captured those. It should be going through and it's writing kind of the buffered frames that it had there. And then it'll average them together and go ahead and put it in here. So we'll wait and see how long that takes. Averaging those frames. And obviously the more frames you have, the slower it's going to go. But it normally doesn't take it too long. And there we go. So it tells me where it's saved to if I ever want to use it again. And it went ahead and automatically applied it here. So now I've got our flat. Oh, I'll change this back to the 15 seconds I had before. And then we'll say we want to apply that same dark frame. Now I'm not going to get much because I still have my light panel on. So I'm going to go run and turn that off and remove it. And we'll see where we are after that. So you can see I've got some stuff here. So Good. I'm getting my files, and we're just about ready to go ahead and auto stretch here. So I'm going to go ahead and close this histogram down. We've got our full image here coming through. And what we're looking at right now is the Veil Nebula. And so now we're ready to live stack. We've got our darks, our flats. Hopefully you can tell the darkness at the edges here is pretty much gone. It looks pretty even all the way through. Now this particular target is real low on my horizon at this time of night here. So we'll probably switch it up in a minute here. But I just want to see our beginning of live stacking and if things are working here. So we're going to click the live stack button, and you can see we've got some options here. First one that always needs to be on is the align frames. If we're not aligning frames, we're not going to be able to get everything stacking correctly. So you see it's come up with the first one. Normally before you do anything, you want it to do at least 2 frames. Because you really won't get anything in the histogram or any of that kind of stuff. So now I'm 2 frames in. I have a nice starting point histogram. So from that, it's really great here as I'm resetting everything. There's a nice, kind of easy button here for the auto stretch, the lightning bolt. What's great is once you do that, it's really going to narrow you in pretty closely to where you need to be. And then you can do the secondary auto stretch here. But then really you're just playing with the sliders here. And this is something I've shown in the previous videos where I was kind of showing some of the other live stacking. But it's especially once you've applied those flat fields, you can see I'm not getting this big drop off in the corners anywhere near as much as I would without the flat field applied. And that's what really makes the difference, because this, sure, is the center target that I'm looking at, but you've also got the Pickering's Triangle Nebula out here, and as you get that vignetting drop off, what ends up happening is you might be able to get the center of your image really distinct, but then everything else drops off. In this case, you can see I've got light over here, dark over here. This is, I think, primarily because I am so low on the horizon, I'm getting the light dome gradient in here. Not too much you can do with that when you're live stacking. That's only something that you're going to be able to deal with in post-processing, at least so far. Maybe it's something they'll be able to put in the future here. But as it's live stacking, it's just going to get more and more fine on what's coming in. And I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here to 100%. You can see I've still got a lot of noise in here, but each frame that comes in, that noise profile is going to shift up slightly. I don't have anywhere near the kind of hot pixels that I would have without subtracting the dark, so that's good. And over time, this image is going to get better and better. However, we have the next thing here that we can do is you will always have this kind of recurring noise in your camera that even sometimes the darks can't subtract out fully. And because you are locked on to a single area with your telescope and it's tracking as best it can, you'll end up with that kind of stuff kind of polluting your pixels and giving you extra noise frame to frame. So in order to remove that, what you kind of want to do is every few frames slightly move the telescope, a little bit more than the width of a star or so, over one way or another, that kind of thing. And what that'll do is that'll really make some of these areas that are kind of these dark, blotchy bits kind of average out, because they won't be in the same part of your camera sensor every time you do it. And that's called dithering. And you can do dithering from Sharpcap while you're doing live stacking. It's entirely doable. So what you're going to do with that is you're going to bring guiding into the mix. If you don't have a telescope with a guide camera on it, then you can be just fine getting away with doing the live stacking as is. But if you do have a guide camera, if you do kind of imaging on your own, or you've added it to your system specifically for live stacking, you can totally do that. And so for guiding, you're going to want an additional piece of software. called PhD2. Many of you are probably familiar with this already, but this is really just meant to take that second camera that's looking through your guide scope, lock on in a star, and keep it dead on as you go through, right? And that's great for longer exposures. Not that important for short exposures, except for when you want to do dithering, because then it can go ahead, lock on that star, move it just a little bit, and then keep it locked on in the new place. So in my case, I've set up, I've connected my guide camera and everything, and it's looping exposures right now. Then I'm just going to tell it to auto select a star. So it said that one there, which is coming up here, has a good profile. It's got a nice peak on where the brightness is, but it isn't flattened out and saturated. And then I'm just going to hit begin guiding. And PhD, which stands for press here dummy, is the idea, is that hopefully it should be pretty simple for it to go through, and then it's just going to kind of map the movements and kind of keep locked on. But once PhD2 is up and running, the info that it has about what it's looking at is available in your other programs like Sharpcap. So now that I've got that up and running, I'm going to go into the guiding tab. You can see how it's got monitor PhD2. So I went ahead and turned that on. So now it's paying attention to what PhD2 is doing, and I have some other options. Pause stacking if the guiding is lost. That can be pretty helpful, especially if you've got a bunch of clouds coming through. Don't start stacking if we're not guiding. Sometimes that can be helpful. I didn't need it for tonight. And then we have automatically dither. This is what you want to turn on and start working with. So the first thing is dither interval. How many seconds do you want it to go between dithers? Normally, you do not need to dither after every single image you take, especially when you're taking these, very short exposure ones. Now, in my case, 600 seconds, 10 minutes is probably too long. I'm going to say I'd like to dither it every, let's say, minute, right? So I'm going to go ahead and set that to 60 seconds. Max dither step. How many pixels in the guide camera do I want to move things over by at most? So I'm going to put it at 5 for right now. If you have a mount that is kind of has a lot of declination issues in guiding, then you may want to say dither and RA only. That way it doesn't take so long to kind of come back in. And then the last one, this is a relatively new feature that is really helpful, is reduce exposure while dithering. So what that means is it's basically just going to be trying to go more quickly to come back in to alignment once everything has done its dithering. So in general, I would just turn that box on and leave it on. Settle threshold, settle time, max settle time. These are things that are going to be real specific to your telescope. How long does it take after it does a little adjustment before it's not kind of vibrating around anymore? And how close do you want it to be locked in before you have it start going again? You just kind of play around with these. Shorter is where you want to get to, but you may need to start with some longer times or higher pixel levels in order to get some good stuff there. But if you noticed, it did actually run a bar while we were talking. Oh, it just started here. It's saying PhD2 is currently dithering, and I'm skipping these frames. You can see it's the frames are running pretty quick because it has reduced that exposure, so that once the dithering's ready to go, it'll go. It's not locked into waiting for 15-second chunks before it starts running again. And there we go. And now it says it's guiding and it's continuing to go. So here's what we're going to do. And it says it couldn't align them. That's fine because things were moving around. But I'm going to go ahead and let's clear this and start the stack over again. And we're going to kind of reset everything here. Back to the standard here. So we've had one frame come in. Remember, we don't really want to do much until we get to 2 frames. Now we've stacked our second frame, and now we can kind of do a quick auto stretch. So I did kind of my double dance button. I clicked the first lightning bolt, then the second lightning bolt. That should get me a pretty decent automatic stretch here. Now, once again, we're still stacking these. The noise is coming down. But what's going to happen is we're 3 frames in. I think after the 4th one, we're going to hit a dither. And that's when the frames that come in after that dither are going to be slightly off from all the other ones. And that is what's really going to start making a difference over the course of 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes of stacking all of these up. Yep, so we're dithering now. You're not going to notice an immediate benefit, right? This is all about that long-term math of it stacking up. But we're going to go ahead and let it stack through here. And while it's doing that, I wanted to kind of talk through some of the other items that are in here. So the first thing is you can kind of auto-save. This auto-save option can be really nice if you are not someone who remembers to save your stack. If you anytime you hit clear, you want to save it, you can. You can view the stack or the individual frames. This can be nice when you are trying to make sure that you're still looking at things, that things haven't clouded out or something like that. But normally you're going to look at the stack. The stacking option here, Sigma clipping, you should turn this on. So what Sigma clipping is going to do for you is really help out when you're taking a bunch of frames like this. Every now and again, you're going to have a satellite trail or a plane fly through and stuff like that. If you're just doing normal stacking, you're going to see those lines kind of forever. Even though they may dim out a bit, they're always going to raise the average for those pixels. But if you do Sigma clipping, then it's going to start ignoring values that go way off the reservation one way or another, and that's just going to really help long-term get rid of things that you really kind of didn't want to see. Save and reset every X minutes. So this can be really nice if you are going to take a bunch of different kind of live stacked images and then try to stack them together later because you can kind of stack stacks later on for additional benefit. So especially if you're going to do things unattended and you kind of want to play with things after the fact, that might be a good one for you. And then I'm not going to go through all the rest of these tabs. I'm just going to talk through some of the things that I have noticed that I've had to adjust. So alignment, you may need to adjust how many stars you can do. You may need to adjust noise reduction and the black level threshold a little bit. When you come in here and it's having trouble aligning, you'll normally see a couple of warning messages about what it was having trouble with. But sometimes if it's saying that it's ignoring frames, in my case it's ignoring a lot because of the dithers, but if you're noticing without dithers that it's dropping frames, this is your likely subject to go look at. Stacking, once again, Sigma clipping is what you want. You can adjust how many initial frames it needs. 5 is the default. I'd probably just leave it at that. Threshold, this is really just the statistics of it. I haven't messed with these from the defaults, but play around with them if you want and see if they give you some benefits from there. It's really going to remove or keep more or less based off of what you do. All right, now we're back. Okay, so yeah, that target was less than 23 degrees on the horizon. I think I started shooting into the neighbor's house. So we've gone ahead and switched targets now to the California Nebula. That's much, much higher up there, so it should be a lot better for us. We've got our dark on there, and then we need to apply our flat. So went ahead and click browse here, and you can see it's categorized when it's been taking these. So 12/14 is our date. Let's come into our capture and our flats, and let's go ahead and pick our flat here. So now we've got the flats back on, the darks on. We're ready to go ahead and live stack again. So, I'm sorry, one last thing. Let's get PhD set up. So I had stopped where it was before. I'm going to go ahead and tell it to begin looping again. Got my stars there, kind of watching them, making sure they're not still drifting. Yep, so all good there. Auto select our star. Got a good one. And push here dummy to start guiding it. So now it's going to start its guiding, and I'm going to clear this out just so that I can make sure it's still actually going through. Yep, looks good. Hopefully it won't start beeping at us again. And so PhD is guiding again. We go to live stacking, make sure everything's cleared out. I'm going to reset all our histograms because that's always just a good thing to do. One frame in, wait for our second frame to come in. And there we go. Now we've got our second frame. And I do my little double dance on my stack button, and there we go. Now, because I left those settings in before, I don't have to make any changes on the guiding side. So just jumping in here, 100 is probably a little too much. Let's go to 50. So as each one of these comes in, the noise is just going to start getting, better and better over time, because these light areas are always light each time. The dark areas, have a lot of noise in them, so it's going to be up and down and up and down, and that's how this stuff is going to average out. Adding in that dithering is going to help with the darker areas because they're going to move a few pixels over each time after the dither is done, and that's just going to help that math know what's black and what's white, that kind of thing. Just waiting for my network to go back through again. So that's really it on what you need to do to start with this. And then there's a few other, fun options that you can play with to try to enhance your images a little bit after that. So this Enhancement tab gives you a couple of neat options. So the first one is I still get a lot of speckling going on, right? Well, I can turn on the Gaussian blur option here, and may have been a little bit hard to tell right off the bat. Let me zoom in a lot more here. Actually, let me go to about 200%. So you can see a lot of this pixelation going on here, right? Obviously, the more you go in. But when you turn on the Gaussian blur, it's essentially going to blur a lot more of that out, right? And that's essentially a very simple level of noise reduction that you can do. So when you're looking at the whole image, it's kind of hard to tell sometimes with it on or off at the whole image level. But when you are pixel peeping, or let's say it's a smaller target that you're going after, and you want to jump in here and you potentially got a decent amount of noise in, turning on that Gaussian blur can kind of give you a nice level of noise reduction. Another option they have is the Bilateral Filter. I'll let you know, I don't know a lot about it. It lets you kind of, in addition to the blurring radius, I think lets you kind of differentiate a little bit between what's in your detail area and what's in your low signal area. The other one is the sharpening side. So you can do an Unsharp Mask. And once again, let me zoom in a little bit more here so it's easier to tell what that's doing. So in the California Nebula, for example, these kind of lines are more of my detail area. If I do that Unsharp Mask, you can see the stars get a lot crispier, but also kind of bumps up your noise level. And that's why a lot of times on the sharpening side, you may do both the Unsharp Mask and the blur. So it'll kind of sharpen things up and kind of blur it out, which can be kind of helpful there. Last one is this deconvolution. Deconvolution is a fancy algorithm that was originally set up for the Hubble telescope to kind of sharpen things up there. And it can be, really pretty cool. However, sometimes your mileage may vary on it. So go ahead and turn it off here. And it'll be kind of hard to tell a whole lot of difference in this kind of early level on there, but it can be really nice when you're looking at something like a galaxy that you've been working, kind of running on for maybe like half an hour or an hour, to kind of have it pop out some of those additional dust lanes. And I know this isn't super pretty, all zoomed in, even though most of us in this hobby are some level of pixel peeper. So I'm going to go ahead and jump this one all the way out here. And I'm just going to leave off. I'm not going to do any of the blurring or anything like that. But it's been capturing now for about 3.5 minutes. So now I want to go back to that histogram and kind of hit my buttons again. Right? And so you can see it's really starting to try to pop things out. But it's probably done a little more than I like to do. I like to see this stuff on the edges here. And this is kind of was stretching in a little too much. So now there we go. That's a little bit better. And instead of messing with the sliders on the big histogram, because it's looking at the whole swath of the image, this is looking at that narrowed in kind of peak in here. So I like to kind of play around with it on this one because it gives you much finer control. So now I can kind of come in here, raise up the blacks a little bit, stretch it in how I'd like to do it. And let's kind of do it like that. So now I've got a much more contrasty image, and we're only 4 minutes in, and I feel like we're seeing it pretty well. Now this is with, once again, hydrogen alpha filter, which I recommend for anybody shooting out of their backyard, suburban skies, anything like that. Right now I'm shooting under about a 90+% moon, along with it being the holiday time, so there are a lot of Christmas lights in my neighborhood. The kids in the backyard from my neighbor's house behind me here have all their kind of Christmas lights and spotlights that are in the backyard on while they're playing. And so all of that just adds for a ton of light pollution. Hydrogen alpha filter cuts through all of that really, really well. This isn't a crazy expensive one. This is from the ZWO hydrogen alpha pack that you can get with the ASI 1600 camera. So it's a 7 nanometer, which is a pretty normal hydrogen alpha filter. So I really recommend one for your camera. Sure, this isn't a color image, but for nebulas and stuff, having that cut through on the light pollution just gives you so much detail on here. And I believe you'll learn to love the black and whites. And then as you start going past maybe just purely live stacking or taking these things off there, you can take color data and hydrogen data and combine it together. I think I've got a video on that, and there's a lot of other tutorials on how to do that well. But now, okay, great. I've got kind of my postage stamp of this out here. How do we now make this more fun to watch it? So really what we want to do is get some of these other panels out of the way. Now there's a really nice feature if you have 2 monitors where you can kind of have all these controls on Sharpcap on monitor 1 and just the image on monitor 2. I plan on kind of playing around with that at some time, but most of us are either working off a desktop or a laptop, in some cases even just an iPad when we're doing this stuff. So let's go ahead and get these out of the way. This little pin up here is the auto hide button. So it'll make it go away. Mouse over the tab, it'll open back up. This is really great once you have your settings kind of nailed down. Same kind of thing down here. And then the image kind of comes up to maximizing that screen usage. Now there's a few things on here that are pretty neat to notice on what's going on. So if you see that we've got these kind of darker bars around the side here, I'm gonna go ahead and zoom in and show you these for just a second. See, I still have stars in here. So what's going on in there? This is a result of that dithering going on. So, if I was just leaving the camera in a single spot over and over again, I wouldn't have these kind of bars around the side. What this is showing me is this center part is kind of the image that has always been in frame, but it's been moving a little bit to the side this way, a little bit to the side that way when the dithers happen. And that is showing me that the dithers are actually working. There's less data in here because not all the frames have that same amount of sky in them. So yeah, a little bit of that's getting cut off, but that's the very edges. Don't particularly care about that. What that means though is that on that dithering, the rest of my image is going to just get better and better because it is going to be able to average out more. So let's bump this in by 50% and just, now we can kind of take a look at the image and really enjoy going through it. Now this is just stacking as it's going along, right? We've got kind of my frames going through here and that kind of thing. At any point in time, I can just mouse over the live stack guy here to kind of see what we got. I can say, let's go ahead and click that in a little bit more if we want to get it in there. I think I actually went a little too far there, so let's go ahead and bring some of this around. And you'll see over time your histogram will change, right? So all of this, it's a little bit more flat here. This is typically more of just the background noise. And then this hump is where your data starts coming in. So you want that middle slider kind of sitting over that data a lot more. And then you can really kind of crush some of those blacks down a little bit if, to kind of to your taste there, whatever feels comfortable for you. And I've had some people kind of say, they really don't like having to fiddle with these, all the time, that kind of thing. In that case, I wouldn't fiddle with it too much. If it, if that's really bugging you, just do the double dance. Just do the auto stretch on that side and the auto stretch on that side, and you will end up with an image that doesn't look too bad. But the auto stretch only does so much, right? It's still just a computer trying to figure out aesthetics, right? So, maybe even not doing the auto stretch on the second one. In this case, I kind of like it a little bit better. But I find that for me, I can kind of play with the levers and get something that I like better than what the computer's going to do all on its own. But it gives me a nice starting point where I'm really just dealing with fine control at this point, instead of really having to start with pulling it all from scratch here. So our live stacking is going well. 8 minutes into it here, and pretty happy with this. I'm going to go to about 33%. It gives me a nice chunk of my monitor, really kind of only losing the edges that I didn't care about. And boy, the California Nebula is looking really good. Let's try some of that enhancement. So I want to do that Unsharp Mask. And maybe kind of hard to tell on YouTube here. Maybe with the zoom in, it'll be even better. Let's go to 100% zoom. All right, so now you can see we've got some dark areas here, right? We've got our light areas here. Let's see what happens when we put that Unsharp Mask on. There's a little bit more definition going on in all of these, right? Let's see if deconvolution looks any better on it. Very subtle differences. But so at this point, it's been stacking for about 12 minutes, which is about 48 frames. And as you can tell, this is really looking nice. If I jump this back to say, let's just look at the individual frame, but when I'm looking at it as the stack, then, we're getting quite a lot in here. And actually, I think that's probably because it wasn't, I think it doesn't, as long as I've got the live stack button on, it doesn't let me mess with the histogram. So let's go ahead and do it this way. Yeah. So that's where my individual frame stretched out is. You can see how much noise is in there. And then that difference when I've got live stacking up and running is really, really big. You can see that noise in the background just really starts to flatten out in the histogram. You can see how much more you're getting out of it at that point. Let's go ahead and have all that come back down here. So really, really, really helpful for getting a lot of detail and not a lot of time. I know this video's been pretty long, but actual stacking times we've been going through about 12 minutes. So, for me, this is a pretty darn good image for only working with, 12 minutes worth of data. And the winners on this, what's driving that, remember in the future, is really a combination of that live stacking with something that's going to let me cut through my light pollution. So in this case, using a hydrogen alpha filter, really makes a big difference. And where I like it a lot of times is I want to see those darker dust lanes come out. I want to have kind of that level of contrast in there. But I also want my brights to be bright. Kind of like doing laundry. I like my whites white and my darks dark. So there we go there. Now, because I didn't finish on it earlier, that deconvolution ratio. So let me really bump in here and looking at these areas, which should be, in a good image, fairly well defined, or I want to get as much definition out of them as possible. When I do an Unsharp Mask, you'll notice our artifacts here. A lot more noise kind of comes in. When I do the deconvolution ratio instead, you notice it really looks a little bit different there. It has a different effect on the noisy areas. Now, that just because this is dark doesn't mean, it got it better there. When you have a lot of data, sometimes that deconvolution, you kind of need to adjust your histogram after the fact. But so let's say Unsharp Mask is what I wanted there maybe. And then I want to get rid of some of that noise with the Gaussian blur. And let's go ahead and jump back out here on the auto there. And so all of those changes are going to be kind of subtle. It's not something, especially if you're doing outreach, that you're probably going to play around with, but it can be something that for yourself may make you enjoy the image a little bit better. So, feel free to play around with those as you like. A lot of times I just leave them off until I've let it really build up into an image that I'm feeling pretty good about, and then I'll turn them on and see if I can play around with it a little bit there. The additional tabs, these are good for setting filters if you have clouds coming in or something like that. But I'm not going to go over those too much. But, as you can see with this, not only do I have these high signal areas are coming out better and better, but the other thing is the lower signal areas. There's a lot more gas in here, and there is separation between this outer edge and the background. Didn't get any of that or any of these kind of wispy lines coming off in the individual image. So the stacking is really the silver bullet there. And everything else that we're doing through here is all in service of making that stacking math better. So these bars at the top and the bottom coming from that dithering, that's all about making sure that the areas that are always in frame shift over enough to make that math easier on it, right? That kind of thing. And so I just want to zoom it in just enough to kind of trim off our border area. Let me see if 33 will help. Now let's go to 40. So there we go. So we kind of trimmed off the border. Now we're really just focusing in on the object there. And you can see those dark dust lanes are coming out more and more, that kind of thing. And it's really starting to get a lot of detail in it. And so at this point, what I'm going to do, I'm going to let it run for a while. So we're at 16 minutes here. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. And when I come back, we'll take a look at it once it's been in for about half an hour or 45 minutes and see what it's looking like. All right, so it's been a few minutes, and let's see where we're at. So about 27 minutes, so just about half an hour in, and this is our image here. Start zooming in a little bit here. There we go. Let's get some of those nasty edges away. And there we go. So still definitely have some noise in this, right? It's not meant to be the same thing as taking 5 hours of exposures, right? But, really pretty good for half an hour here of what you can see when you're trying to get good, quick looks at stuff. Lots of detail in here. A lot of, kind of that wispy nebula coming out from the side there before you get to the background. It looks pretty good. So I'm going to do just kind of a final kind of play around with the histogram on this one here. Yeah, boy, that second button sure isn't working for me tonight. So on getting something that I think is super pretty. All right. I think that's pretty darn good for me. So, still got a lot of speckled background in here. Would expect to get that, but I'm not really caring too much about all that. Caring about all of this. Everything coming out. Those lights, those darks, all that kind of good stuff. So, just for funsies, I'll bring the black level a little bit more there, just to make it a little smoother for what we've got. And then I'm going to go ahead and save what we've got here. So let's say I'm going to do two things. One, I'm going to save it as the 16-bit stack. And I'm going to go ahead and save it exactly as seen on the screen here. So now should be able to come into our Sharpcap captures area and look at the most recent time, and here's what we just saved off. So looking at the final full PNG, not too bad. So from right here I could edit it. Let's just say I want to crop out those bad edges just to have a little bit cleaner image. And maybe I don't care as much about that other stuff. It's really this that I'm going for. And let's save a copy. Yeah, we'll save it in our images folder. And there we go, right? So pretty good image, just straight off of live stacking. Ready to post that to Facebook, Instagram, wherever. And I feel pretty good about it. So great. And the great thing about doing live stacking is had all this in, half hour, and I'm ready to move on to the next thing. So what I'm going to do here is let's just go ahead and turn off the live stack, and let's go find our next target. PhD is going to sit here and yell at me because it can't find a star because we're moving. There we go. So we'll just loop on the new area, select our star, lock in on it, and then let's take a look at what we're seeing in this area. And there we go. So while that's in the right area, I want to go ahead and live stack here. We're going to go ahead and clear what we had before, but I'm going to leave the histogram in the same spot kind of that it was before, and we'll let it go ahead and build up our images here. Oops, that's probably a bad idea with this one, so let's reset that. So now I've moved over to the Flaming Star Nebula, which I think is one of the more kind of interesting hydrogen-rich targets out there. So it works really well for a hydrogen alpha filter. And we're going to let it go ahead and start building up. It could probably use a good stretch on its own here. So there we go. So on this one, what we're looking at in this target is kind of this big core area and then coming off from here. And I'm not going to go over all the bells and whistles again. We already did that. And now we're just on for the live stack. So while we're waiting for this to go, each one that's coming in, you'll notice that these details start popping out a little bit more and a little bit more each time. And so we'll just let this one do what the other one did and let it go ahead and stack up for a while here, and we'll see how it goes as it goes through for a few minutes. All right, and so now let's take a look at where we are here. just a little shy of 15 minutes. And you can see so much more detail in on this now, just like with our other images before. Let's zoom on in here, and you can really see all these kind of wavy details off of this, kind of that big gas arm coming out to the side there. Just really, really easy to get some benefits doing the live stacking and short exposure. Once again, these are just 15-second exposures going through and dithering about every 60 seconds or so. So on this one, once again, I'm going to do what I did last time. I'm going to go ahead and save it. In this case, I'm just going to save it exactly as seen. And now that that one's been saved, let's go to the processed. With the stretch, let's do that same kind of cropping that we did before here. But this time, because my target's a little smaller, come on, I'll bring it in and really just kind of focus on the subject itself here. And there we go. So I've got my Flaming Star Nebula and my California Nebula. Not too bad for a combined about an hour worth of live stacking. Using an hydrogen alpha filter under pretty close to a full moon in suburban skies. So that's it for this time. I hope that's helpful for you guys. I encourage you all to try this out. It's a nice way to get some fun enjoyment without having to do the hours and hours of post-processing and that kind of thing. And it's especially great for outreach. A hydrogen alpha filter at a star party just blows people's minds, right? People are kind of used to seeing the moon or seeing pictures of Jupiter or Saturn, even if it kind of blows them away the first time they look through a telescope. But it's really rare at one of these parties for someone to have the ability to show them a nebula with a lot of detail, right? And being that person that can provide that can be a lot of fun. So, encourage you guys to play around with it. Until next time, I wish everybody clear skies.